Alexa. They will be giving us a presentation on the automation and the future of supply chains for us. We're looking forward to it. Just before we get started on that, just want to go through a quick run through of Plug and Play, who we are, what we do for the uninitiated. Do you mind moving to the next slide after that as well? Plug and Play, we kind of pride ourselves on being the ultimate innovation platform that's kind of built off of 3 different pillars: our venture capital investments, our corporate innovation platform, as well as our accelerator programs, where many of the startups that are joining us today have interacted with our corporate partners, as well as our venture capital arm and our ventures associates. All of these 3 things kind of work in tandem together, but they also work independently of each other, depending on who is interacting with our program where. Next slide for me, please. A lot of this it's not just startups and corporations working with us. We actually have a huge network of a variety of different partners, mentors, VCs, regulators, universities, and government agencies that all work with us to help us build this ultimate innovation platform that we really appreciate all of you participating in today. Besides that, we offer our corporate partners a complete turnkey solution to the innovation structure of startups, as well as just the innovation pipeline that startups are able to bring to bear for our corporate partners. Next slide, please. We do this through a variety of different methods, whether it be on our corporate side or our startup side. We offer a lot of different services for those who haven't heard of us before. We're more than happy to talk to you more in depth about all of these different kinds of things. If you would like to speak with any of us, feel free to reach out to Zach at PNPTC or any of the other Plug and Play members that you're already communicating with. One more slide over for me. We do a lot of our expansions and things like that through our global reach. So to date, we have roughly 38 offices worldwide. We have over 35,000 startups in our ecosystem, and we do this through 19 industry-specific verticals that we have facilitated a lot of deal flows, interactions between startups, corporates, and government agencies and whatnot through all of the offices that you see here on this list. That being said, this is pretty much where I wanted to leave a very brief introduction for those who have not heard of Plug and Play before. Those that have, welcome back, and we're excited that you're here. Kyle, can you move on one more for me? There are different kinds of ways that you can engage with us. We do not just host webinars, although it looks like that nowadays in the COVID world. We have lots of different programs and events that we are hosting worldwide. Some of them are in person nowadays, depending on what country you're in. We also have a lot of executive networking, corporate to corporate, startup to startup. We facilitate a lot of interactions on our platform, and if you would like to be a part of that, we'd be more than happy to facilitate it. That being said, that's pretty much it for the Plug and Play introduction. I'm going to go ahead and hand it off to Kyle and Alexa here on the Moeco team to go ahead and get started with our presentations. Guys, if you want to go ahead and get started, take it away.
Awesome, wonderful. Thank you so much, Zach, and thank you again to the entire Plug and Play team and the staff as well, Tiffany and Allie, who we've been having the pleasure to work with to prepare these webinars and this webinar series that Alexa and I and the Moeco team will be presenting to you over the next couple weeks. But truly, we couldn't have done this without not just Plug and Play, but also our participation in Plug and Play. So I'm Kyle, and Alexa here is joining me, our co-founder and COO of Moeco, and we'll tell you a little bit more about us. But today we're here to focus on automation and the future of supply chains. But before we do dive into this, again, a big thank you to the entire Plug and Play team, and more particularly the new materials, the IoT programs, as well as we had the chance to go through the new materials program here in the Bay Area, and also have had the chance to participate in a number of other programs throughout the Plug and Play ecosystem, and had nothing but an outstanding experience throughout the entire thing. And now being able to present you with our knowledge and our insights of the industry, from the headlines of innovation all the way through to the topic of what we're doing today, is just an absolute pleasure for us. So again, thank you everyone. And for those who haven't checked out Plug and Play, you get our highest recommendation to do so beyond what Zach has already shared with you guys as well. So again, thank you to the Plug and Play team for helping this to be had. So again, today I'm one of your speakers, Kyle Ellicott. I'm an advisor to the Moeco team and also the co-founder of Topio Networks and a number of other companies. And a lot more I can talk about later. And I'm joined today with our co-founder and COO, Chief Operating Officer of Moeco, Alexa. And again, we're going to be talking today about automation in the future of supply chains, what that means for you and what that means here in 2020, a foundational year of transformation as we know, but also looking ahead to 2021 as well. So we'll be talking a little bit about where things are today in 2020 in terms of the digitization we've all had to go through on an accelerated course, to where supply chains were, to where they are now, and then talk a little bit about what we're seeing, having worked with a number of Global 2000 companies around the world, what they have shared with us and what we have seen working with them as new opportunities and gap areas that both those that are listening as entrepreneurs can look to fill and partner as well on, and then those as corporates and investors can look as areas of opportunity as well to either invest or to build upon. And then we'll talk about the opportunities and trends looking ahead to the year in front of us as well. And we'll get into some use cases and a few other areas throughout today's discussion. And because we are live and this is a fun, exciting webinar, there is a Q&A box, so feel free to drop those throughout the course of today's presentation. But just in the essence of time, we'll probably save those to the end rather than asking them in real time, but do feel free to drop them in as they come. If we're unable, Alexa and I, to get to those questions at the end, the team will make sure that you get connected with us and we'll do our best to follow up afterwards via email. So do not hesitate in that sense, and we will be available for your questions afterwards as well. All right. With that, I just want to touch back, as I mentioned, on kind of what's happened this year, and also touch back on our last webinar that we did in the beginning of this series of 5+ webinars that we'll be hosting week over week here with the Plug and Play team. And that is the Industry 4.0 and really our new digitized world. You know, here in 2020, and before I get to that, over the last decade, we've seen a number of technologies we're going to be talking about and referencing throughout today's presentation that have been teased, or really we've started to see small advancements with, again, over these last 10 years, and the Internet of Things being one of those and all that it encompasses. And as those 10 years have gone by, each of these technology areas had further advanced, and also we've started to see a small beginning of converging of these technologies, leading up to 2020 when everything was accelerated. The digitization as we know it just went rapidly, and we saw everything start to get converged in a way that we had only dreamt of for the past 10 years. And this is very exciting. Now, to caveat that, yes, this is still early days of some of these things, but we have never seen a convergence of technology and industries like we have this year in 2020. And I'm going to go through a few of those here very quickly. And this image that you're seeing is provided by one of our partners who we work very closely with in terms of data and insights around these industries and around these technologies, helping to provide them with the latest and greatest insights on what we're seeing from the supply chain and logistics side of the industry as well. And so we'll go in deeper on some of these in just a moment. But in terms of trends that we saw here in 2020, kicking things off, edge. We started to see the emergence of edge going in terms of connectivity beyond just 4G and 4G LTE to really the emergence of 5G and in some cases 6G, as Samsung has put their stake in the flag of the fact that they are focusing on the next level of connectivity beyond 5G. But we saw 5G and edge connectivity really become a part of the technology stack and something that everyone felt they needed to have integrated into their infrastructure and IT deployments. And this is the idea of pushing out processing, pushing out data, pushing out everything to the device and to the sensor level. And that 5G component comes into now providing connectivity at a scale we never could have imagined before. Blockchain now becomes a part of the stack. We're going to talk a lot about how that plays a role into the future of supply chain and logistics in terms of track and trace, but also in just general transparency as well. And going back to Edge, I want to just touch on that for one more second. Edge, I mentioned this in the last webinar and reiterating it, that right now we're looking at this being a 250 billion moving into the $1 trillion industry here in the next coming years. Artificial intelligence. AI has now played a role in terms of the automation of our entire lives, from consumers to enterprise, and even more importantly today, into our supply chain. How we look at the future of our supply chains, how they will be automated, how they will be reactive based on that intelligence layer and the data layer that, again, we'll be speaking about. We're seeing the advancements in industrial IoT, a lot of what we're going to be talking about today. Robotics and manufacturing are starting to find a synergy between each other, and where it was once dominated by Southeast Asia, now we're starting to see this on a global level. Digital twins, asset and avatars, and specifically twins, we're starting to see this absolutely explode throughout the enterprise. And something starting to emerge for you to keep your eyes on is the digital supply chain twin, so the DSCT. And this is a practice where we're going to be talking again a little bit later around mapping your once physical infrastructures to digital, giving you a full digital map of everything in your supply chain on a global scale in real time, but also allowing you to make a little bit of change, test things, and create use cases that you might not otherwise have been able to do with physical, and now being able to see how those react on a digital form. Autonomy, we're seeing autonomous throughout vehicles, all the way through the industrial IoT, talking about hyper-localized logistics. Again, 2020 brought us a lot of changes this year. We saw the emergence go from global to very quickly localized. That's a trend that we think we're going to see a hybrid of moving into 2021. And the immersive environment starting to heat up, AR, VR, mixed realities, and the like. Also seeing the emergence of space. And again, that plays a big role into supply chains as well, as we look to have certain technologies and certain things actually done in the atmosphere, the low orbit, versus just here on the ground. And then, of course, last but not least, voice assistants taking over as our new user interface. So the point of this is just to recap a little bit of why today's topic is so important as we head into the future of supply chains. Our world is now more digitized. And this is not just a statement for you to walk away with hearing on a webinar. This is a true statement for you to walk back into the boardroom, for you to walk into your conference room or into your investor meetings and understand that this is something you have to be thinking about long term, and how your business will be digitized, and how you can take advantage, and how you can play a role in that future as well. All right, so some evolution of the supply chain. And this is an outstanding graphic that comes from a good friend of ours here at Moeco and of mine, Paul Bradley. Paul is the CEO of a great company out of Southeast Asia. This is actually a graphic of his showing the growth of supply chains. And I want to take you through this because it is very foundational. And just to take a step back, supply chains as of yesterday, to walk us through this, operated all within a company's own. Company's assets, company's infrastructure, everything within the company. Everything was built around functionality. It was a very human driven, and it was a one size fits all picture. Fast forward 24 hours to today. Today, we're now looking at supply chains that are networked of shared assets, end-to-end solutions, and no longer just about functionality. We're looking at intelligent technologies being introduced and everything being more real-time, dynamic, and flexible. But to take on the full evolution, let's take a look back in history. So traditional logistics, point to point. Traditional logistics were all about getting from one point to the other. the optimal movement of product from one location, point A, to location B, from freight to trucking to warehouse and the end consumer. Just very simple linear process. And then as we moved into this new area of total logistics, we started adding visibility into that process, being able to understand what's happening, where things are, and being able to manage that on a more platform basis. Keyword we're going to be coming back to. Leading into supply chain management, or SCM. And supply chain management became a tipping point, as you can see in the graphic. We start to lean in to this more digitized world. And that push factor, that tipping point that Paul has expressed here, and we're going to be talking more about, started to dynamically integrate a continuous activity. So no longer just linear, but really start to link everything together that was once separated and start to introduce new optimization, start to introduce technology. Then we get to demand chain management, DCM. And DCM takes all of the above and those efficiencies and refines it. Starts to add in just in time, but really with a focus on customer satisfaction, customer demand, thinking about global and localized sourcing, early detection of delivery and risks. So this is when we started to look at, oh, well, now it's not just about point A to point B. It's not just about being able to see that and understand where things may be moving, but now we actually have to optimize for that. And we have to not just optimize, but take in the growth of consumer demand, which again, here in 2020, we saw a dramatic change, which pushed us more locally than we ever had been in terms of our more globalization of supply chains. And last but not least, leading into what is the future of supply chains. And we very much agree, and with Paul's term here, dynamic value networks. And that is the idea that really, one, it's one of the greatest opportunities for supply chains, but also the idea that everything is integrated, everything is adaptable with plug and play capabilities. So new technologies can be integrated as they break out or as they grow, and they can be removed just as fast. It allows for the integration of fixed manufacture centers, but also flexible and virtual warehouses as well. Allows for this flow, this dynamic flow of product and inventory, capital constraints or opportunities, and also creates this circular flow of what's happening, what's not happening, what can we add, what can we remove, and what new products and services can be created out of this as well. A very exciting opportunity, and some companies that are already focusing on this that we know in the early days include Apple, Amazon, Alibaba, and Walmart, along with several others. But the point of this is, again, that dynamic value network really has taken us from point to point, where we began getting product from point A to point B, to this now very digitized and dynamic supply chain, where we're starting to see everything in real time in a digital fashion, which Alexa is going to share more about here in just a moment. And it's all plug and play. And so I'm going to turn it over to Alexa to share a little bit more about what we're seeing even further, not just in supply chains, but on the logistics side. What we're seeing at Moeco from our conversations with customers, what we've been seeing building product for a few years now in this industry, and from all the conversations that we've been having, not just as experts in this space, but also with investors and again, other executives as well. And so Alexa, I'm going to turn it over to you and just guide me through your slides, but the floor is yours.
Thanks, Kyle. Can you hear me well? Just checking.
Loud and clear.
Okay, perfect. So thanks for guiding us through the evolutionary process. And my role here is to answer to the question, what's now? What are we going to do with that? And what are the technologies that can enable this process moving? So the actual goal here, I guess, is to shift from the analog supply chain management to digital one. And we all know companies like Amazon that have done a great job about it. And at the very beginning, it was there by design. But a lot of companies can use this experience and use the data-driven solutions to empower their supply chain management. And again, when we talk about data, of course, for logistics, the most crucial ones would be the location. That's pretty obvious, as well as the conditions along the chain. And that is what essential, and that is what should be reflected in so-called digital supply chain twin. I'm going to talk a little bit more about what is digital supply chain twin in a second, but before that, just to emphasize on the importance of that problem these days because of the current pandemic. Supply chain management has become increasingly important. And as there is a lot of interruptions along the chain, a lot of stakeholders taking over this process, and there is still a huge human aspect and a lot of human efforts that are involved. And I know that's going to be changing. And we are here to support this process and to dive deeper and understand more of what could be improved to reduce the human efforts and to improve the operations of the supply chain management. And I think the best is to talk about what digital means, what is digital supply chain twin means. And we could move to the next slide here. And when we talk about digital supply chain twin, we understand that this is the digitalization of the products straight from the production line and going through all the processes along with logistics, which will take the longest cycle and which needs to be improved here. And we're kind of taking a deeper look on the logistics. And of course, the logistics is ending up with either resellers or direct consumers. And we want to know as much data as possible at each stage. And when we talk about data, it is primarily real-time data to improve any issues on the go, to understand and react, and of course to mitigate risks as soon as possible. So when we talk about planning or forecasting, the data is also involved. And when we do the analysis of the data, we can definitely implement changes on the operational level and control the whole supply chain by having more real-time data. It all leads to cost reduction as a goal. We all know that a lot of companies would just be interested in cost reduction process along with everything else, but cost reduction is kind of the goal for all of us. And digital supply chain would definitely reflect everything if done properly. And we're here at Moeco to share the experience of what we have learned so far and what we can share with you. Next slide, please. So with the on the bottom of the slide, you can see there are multiple stakeholders of the supply chain, and they all would like to get an access to the data. And of course, by taking over the digital supply chain twin and the data from it, one of these stakeholders can benefit by sharing this data with others. And of course, the producers would be interested in taking over the solution. Logistics companies, those companies that are very much attached to the quality assurance, to insurance companies as well, distribution centers, warehouses. And the main goal is to improve the quality of for the end customer. So when we talk about quality, that means the goods are being delivered in the right conditions. When we talk about sensitive goods like food, pharmaceutical, a lot of sensitive products, we need to understand the conditions, not only when it leaves the production, but also along the logistics process. And of course, the main goal is to make sure that the conditions were always proper along the whole cycle, and also preferably to understand that in real time. So time, how long it was on the way, how long it was stored, carried, where, how much time it spent in warehouse or even on the shelf. That could also be got as a digital twin will gather this information. Location online, it is crucial, as we all get only the tracking number. We can just understand the very approximate location. It is now being changed with the digitalization, and we can have a precise location of the goods in real time. So SLA process is also improved by understanding of the conditions, time, location, of course, and as a result, the end user or customer who gets the product benefits from this data, and that is the actual goal of any company that would be producing or delivering the goods. And then, I guess, next slide. So how Moeco is doing that for our clients, and how do we improve the supply chain management? Again, as Kyle started with the evolution slide, we are getting to the point where the producer understands and solves the traditional problem by understanding where the good is now and what is the condition. We solve the demand chain management task, usually ensuring that the goods are supplied in the right moment, in the right condition, in the right time. And that is all being viewed digitally, almost in real time. And also the reducing the human efforts and making the supply chain dynamic, and ensuring that the customers are satisfied with the conditions of the goods they receive, is something that needs to be ensured. And again, the data is being collected from the digital twin and analyzed. And this is something, this is the opportunity that we are unlocking with the help of digital twin. So what is Moeco? The next slide will explain and kind of illustrates the platform that we have that is collecting the data from physical goods. And not only collecting it, we also reflect it and make the digital picture of the whole supply chain and provide it to the client. And of course, by doing that, we allow businesses to optimize their logistics and reduce costs and create an added value to their logistics process. So next slide will explain of how exactly we do that. And that, I think this is something that's we need to dive deeper into each stage, but we take over the whole process. We produce and provide sensors that are low cost with a low battery life, and that have a form of stickers, could be attached to any shipment. And by reducing the cost of these sensors, as we have a really deep expertise in hardware, we understand that our company could go down to the shipment level and really create this digital shipment twin. Then we collect this data and upload it to the platform and provide the platform to the client, and we can do it on premise as well. The data could be anonymized and provided to the customer as is, or we could also get an access to this data if the client allows us to analyze that. And then we reflect the data either as a report or analyze data using machine learning in dashboards or mobile app, or could be integrated into any of the IT infrastructures. So as a result, next slide, Kyle, please. Yep. So as a result, we provide the automation of a lot of processes for logistics. And again, that could be done in real time or non-real time. It depends on use case and depends very much of what are the requirements. For example, for pharmaceuticals companies, that they would prefer the data logger, and they do not really need the access to the real-time data. But for most of our clients, like cold chain, food or sensitive goods manufacturers, insurance companies especially, they would prefer real-time data reflected in the dashboards. And by doing that, they can see and eliminate the disruptions along the chain and optimize the processes. Next slide, please. So this is exactly how it looks like for the client. They see the dashboard, they see all the stages of the products going through the stages in the right conditions, in the right time. We feel like the data is the key here, and a lot of times companies would react to any kind of issues by just tapping the digital picture of the logistics. I would like to share one of the use cases with the clients that we have to give you a better illustration and just to explain what kind of value the client gets. This is the company, the chemical company called DuPont, and we started with them when we got accepted to Plug and Play Acceleration Program. And we were doing a lot of customer development at that time, really understanding what could be the value of our products and what are the general problems of the supply chain. We understood that by making it digital, we could provide a lot of value, but also there is another goal to implement the solution into the existing companies' operations and infrastructure. Trying to really make it seamlessly. We were working with DuPont and still work with them on projects, now even more than one project, but having this feedback is definitely necessary to create a great product that will reflect all the needs of those who have logistics in their operations. And definitely improving DuPont's logistics was a goal and still is, and we're doing it right now. And the main issue here is to avoid any losses, damages, of course, and by collecting the real-time data, we could definitely do that, providing the data to the clients so they could react to any issues is crucial. And also the location is not only about how how perfectly or imperfectly the product is shipped, but also there is sometimes an issues when we need to avoid certain territories when we send the goods, and we want to make sure that we have avoided that by providing a real-time data to the client. Third very important thing is to be able to share the data with the distributors and clients that will receive the goods. So by generating the link and sharing it with the client could be a great tool to take over the customer success process and make sure that the quality of the goods are covered. So improving some of the issues for DuPont and providing them extra value for their customer satisfaction actually inspired us to move further on it. As we now have about 10 like really big clients, you know, in work, we really understand that there is a great demand of supply chain digitalization, and by having this expertise, both hardware and software, we provide the solution and are happy to share our technical knowledge and how to kind of implement the technology and adopt it within a company. And that was a great experience that we have gone with DuPont. And it's a great pleasure to still be a part of Plug and Play and talk, have an access to those clients, have an access to big corporations that are willing to share their issues, and understanding that we have this opportunity to provide them the technology of digitalization, to give them an access and enable them to use the technology for their own benefits. I think at this point, I'm going to give the word back to Kyle, and I think that we now can access the questions if there are any.
Well, real quick, I absolutely. Before we get to questions, I want to come back and just kind of recap everything that Alexa touched on and made points to, because so much of what she mentioned we focus on here at Moeco, but in general, we've seen so many different trends and where things are going here in the future. And I thought it'd be good to kind of recap what we're seeing happening here in the end of the year of 2020, but also looking ahead to 2021, so that you as the audience tuning in can prepare yourself. And again, we touched on a lot of these. Alexa mentioned about 8 of these 10 that we focus on here at Moeco. But again, those out there that are listening should be paying attention to these trends, definitely looking at the next year. I've had the pleasure of speaking with about 20 different investors over the past few days that continually have told me that their biggest area of opportunity they're focusing on, or others should be focusing on, is around supply chains and logistics. And this is something that we're continually starting to see more and more capital go into. Again, as Alexa mentioned, us at Moeco are focusing on more conversations and hearing more from executives wanting to digitize their infrastructures, to digitize their supply chains as well. And so just a quick recap as to kind of where things are going here in 2020 and heading into 2021. And first and foremost, the supply chain as a service, or SCAAS, so supply chain as a service. We are moving to those more synergistic, flexible, and data-driven real-time supply chains, as Alexa had pointed out throughout her part of the discussion. And this new model, or this new term that's being coined up there, brings the outsourcing into supply chain. So where, once again, as we touched on, supply chains were very much in-house. It was all within a company. It was all point to point. Everything was held internally. Now we're starting to see that open up, where activities like manufacturing, like logistics, like inventory management, and others are actually being outsourced and brought in through skilled on-demand teams. So these are trends that, again, looking forward in the next year, supply chain as a service, but more importantly, the idea of on-demand teams, plug and play infrastructures, control towers, Now that everything is going out and becoming more decentralized, we're seeing the emergence of an intelligent control tower, a central point that can see all of this activity and where it's going, how it's moving, and use automation or intelligence, as we mentioned, to actually optimize for that as well. And be able to provide decisions and help control or do risk mitigation throughout the entire network. Circular supply chains, again, point to point, one to one, linear. We're now seeing circular supply chains being the norm, where once you send out a product and it goes through its supply chain, that there's actually the recycling of those products and materials to create new products as well. So keeping everything flowing in a circular motion. We expect that to be not just a trend for 2021, but again, continuing to be the norm going forward. Automation leading into hyper automation. So automation, probably one of the biggest areas of opportunity, those that are paying attention to look at in terms of either investment or building. Automation around AI and data. And if I wasn't clear, data. But leading into the hyper automation of this. So rapid identification, rapid automation of processes, looking at everything, as Alexa said, digital first. Not thinking physically, but thinking digitally on your entire infrastructure and supply chain. And back on automation, this is AI everything. Data drives all decisions. It drives everything from inventory management to robotics to how things are getting from point to point. So vehicles, autonomous drones, again, autonomous vehicles as well. And we're seeing more of that here as we touch into the end of the year, looking towards 2021. Smart robotics. Smart robotics, had a great conversation with some investor friends of ours here at Moeco just in the past few days of how robotics have gone from not just being a part of manufacturing, but to an intelligence level. And we're playing more a role of that here at Moeco with bringing them into that digitized supply chain environment that we focus on. And these smart robots are focusing on parts, sorting, identification, learning through training models. So bringing in the human element to get things going and then turning that over into models that are fully data-driven and leaving that autonomy of the supply chain to these new smart robots. Digitization, digital twins. Alexa touched on this so much that I don't think I need to go into it, but just again, the idea of bringing this digital map, this digital view of everything in your supply chain and creating a replication of every physical asset that you have so that not only do you see it digitally, but also you can test, see use cases, test new use cases, new products, new risk scenarios, and see how those react in your supply chain with no or little cost as well. Huge opportunity, and also allows for new products to be created and test them in those digital environments, again, without having to create something physically first. A good use case I want to bring up in addition to what Alexa touched on around DuPont is we also heard from one of the executives over at Decathlon, a large retailer globally, and what they're doing. And they have over 40,000 as the end of last year, 2019, over 40,000 RFID tags and sensors throughout their entire global supply chain. And every single one has been digitized and has a digital twin attached to it, allowing them full data management on everything that happens throughout every bit of that product life cycle, every bit of that supply chain as it goes through, allowing them to see basic intelligence, have event triggers in and out of the store, in and out of the warehouse, and automate that and allow, as Alexa pointed out, data to be limited to those who need it, when they need it, where they need it, and how they need it, whether that be in store, that be the human element, that be a data-driven automated element as well. So a ton happening in this space. And again, that's why we're focusing on it so heavily here at Moeco. And rounding out this last half of trends for the year, green logistics and climate smart supply chains. We're looking at sustainability across the board. We touched upon this in our last webinar. I'm going to touch on it again. Over 60%, 60, of customers do not mind paying more or a premium for products that are sustainably made. This is an opportunity for anyone building products, not just to do good for their business, not just to do good for the environment, but also you have the ability to offset some of those costs as you do the initial conversion from your traditional supply chain and logistics to a more climate friendly or green logistics process. And that includes going back to electric and autonomous or solar powered vehicles, looking at energy management systems, looking at climate smart resource management as well. KPMG has recently got into this industry by launching a blockchain-based climate accounting infrastructure. So CAI, not CIA, but CAI solution to help organizations actually manage, report, and offset some of those greenhouse emissions and plug right into their existing systems, plug into their IoT sensor sets as well. Flexible or elastic logistics, Alexa talked on this throughout her part of the presentation on that on-demand, flexible, minimized infrastructure that people should be focusing on for their future supply chains. Greater transparency and visibility goes without saying. We want to see more as consumers, and enterprises are being expected to show more in terms of that supply chain, but also internally, we want to see everything. We want to know where everything is. We want to know how everything is being handled, that condition monitoring, that real-time data, that real-time environmental factor as well. Hybrid supply chains. This is now, so what we just went through 1 through 8 and everything we've talked about today, hybrid supply chains. This is where we start to see a transition. Over the next year and into 2022, we're going to see a hybrid supply chain model exist throughout many corporations as we start to integrate these were once traditional to more digital or dynamic supply chain models. So you're going to see a combination of some of these trends as people start to find the right fit for them, and whether that be both cloud hardware, that be autonomous to manual controlled vehicles, that may be green to a traditional or global versus local. These are going to be blended models that we're going to expect to see over the next couple of years as people start to find, again, that right spot for them. And then last but not least, a priority focused on security and data sharing. Who should see what in and out of the organization? Internally, in terms of the manufacturing facilities and warehouses to retail environments, all the way through the devices, and then externally as well, what's being shown to customers and what may not be, or to partners and suppliers and the like as well. And lastly, I'll just touch on the enabling technologies. We talked about this in the beginning. We talked about this on the last webinar of the Industry 4.0 and the digitization of our entire world and infrastructures. We have a ton of enabling technologies that are going to be powering the future of supply chains. We touched a little bit on digital twins and digitization. We talked about automation. We talked about these flexible logistic models and supply chains, but also consider 3D printing. When we start to look at hyper-localization and the way that logistics will be moving forward, 3D printing and on-demand production of products will occur. 5G, we talked about the future of connectivity. It's here, it's coming even faster as edge, and looking at how we can do processing on sensors and on devices as well. That is coming. Artificial intelligence goes without saying. Immersive, so AR and VR, looking at how those can be used in these environments to recognize products, to see the details of those products, to move into training models and the like. Distributed cloud, distributed storage, distributed systems, again. And then lastly, the Internet of Things. We've talked about IoT, the Internet of Things, as an emerging trend for the past decade. It's here. It's finally here, thanks to all of these trends, all of these enabling technologies, and the convergence of all of this. So as we round out 2020 and we look ahead to the year, think about convergence, think about digitization, but most of all, think about how to look at your supply chains, both short and long term, how things can be synergistic, flexible, and data driven to give you the digitization that your business needs and needs to succeed, not just today, but going forward, to have the head on not just your competition, but also to handle future customer demands as things scale. And with that, a huge thank you again to the Plug and Play team and to all of you for tuning in. Alexa, thank you so much for sharing all of the insights around who we are here at Moeco and what Moeco has seen working and talking with so many executives and investors in this space. And with that, as I wrap up, we'll have a minute or two for questions. But again, a big shout out to Zachary, to Ali and Tiffany at the Plug and Play organization for making this possible for Alexa and a Moeco team and I to present these webinars to you. We've got 3 more coming up before the end of the year. And next we'll be talking about digitized infrastructures to then distributed and decentralized applications to then the future of connectivity. And again, a big thank you to everybody. And Alexa and I are here for what looks like maybe one question, and then we'll wrap up and be available afterwards.
Now, I see there is a question here in the Q&A part, and I would love to answer that. Thanks, Eric, for asking the question. And just sharing from our experience and our perspective on cost and time, that's would be impacts of the AI in the end-to-end process. So what we've learned so far is that for most of our clients, time means human efforts. Time means money at the end. So when we think about any disruption along the chain, we know that there's going to be someone who's going to take care of that, spend a lot of time for that, and at the end, we're going to count it as expense. So when we think about technologies enabling companies to spend less time, that's automatically means saving costs. So AI could be also a great enabler of any technology that could be that could have AI as a part or be AI driven, but definitely everything will be attached to the data. And when we think about how do we process the data, we think about how do we get the data from the physical assets. And this is something that digitalization process means, is extracting the data, sourcing the data from the physical asset, and then we'll have an access to process the data and use AI and machine learning to get some additional results. Hope that answered the question.
I think that was great. Awesome. So, oh, sorry, go ahead, Ali.
No, sure. It looks like there's 2 more questions if you don't mind answering if you have the time.
Yeah, so real quick, Anonymous, we're going to come right back to you, but Chris, I'm going to jump ahead. So Alexa, question from Chris. Thank you again for everyone for the great questions. Are there any opportunities for individuals to co-venture with Moeco on implementing and maintaining their systems into their local economies outside of California? So I think in summary, is there an opportunity for individuals to partner with Moeco on potential business opportunities outside of California?
Yeah, great question, thanks. So we're here and hosting these webinars to be able to reconnect with anyone who can benefit out of our knowledge, our technology, and we're definitely open to connect. And there is my email there. You can shoot me an email and tell me more about what is the project and how we could help. And we're definitely here to help with our expertise and the product to provide benefits to your individual project or to our enterprise clients. We'll do both. Definitely open for that.
Awesome. And then last question, Anonymous. They go without a name, so we'll do our best to answer this. But does the tracking stop once the consumer receives a product, or can consumer usage be learned as well too?
Great question. That's a great anonymous attendee that knows what he's talking about. Yeah, there is a potential, definitely there is a potential to learn the customer behavior and go over the whole life cycle of the product, and to be able to provide this information to the producer that could definitely benefit from it. But there are certain restrictions on the GDPR side. If we talk about Europe, if we talk about the US, there is a number of limitations, and we're now working with that to overcome them, because there is no limitations for startups, right? We're designed to overcome any obstacles. So we usually work with companies who deliver their products to other businesses. So it's B2B or B2B2B. We do not work with B2B2C just yet, but we're planning to, and we're now working on one of the projects that will hopefully will enable us to roll out the next products of Moeco. That will be called a product lifecycle monitoring.
Awesome. And we have one last question, but I think you just kind of touched on it. So Sabathari, and apologies, if you can, definitely reach out to Alexa on that to get further details around privacy, but I think she just covered it. But if there's something we didn't get to, do reach out to Alexa and I and the team, and we'll do our best. And Arkin, we are out of time, so if you can reach out to Alexa, and we'll happily answer that question for you further as well. Again, thank you so much to the Plug and Play team, and to you, all of us, for tuning in. We greatly appreciate the time, and look forward to seeing you at the next webinar.
Thank you, Kyle. Thanks, Alexa. I hope everyone has a great day.
Thank you, Alexandra.
Thanks,
You
everybody.
have a great day too. Thanks for attending.